This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice. I have one of the most awesome trading indicators I've ever built that I'm going to share with you today. It's open source, it's free, it's on TradingView, and if you love crypto and you love footprints and you love open interest, this was made for you. And if you don't like any of that stuff, then get out of here. I'm totally kidding. All traders are welcome. But in this video, we're going to look at a new type of volume footprint. If you're familiar with what a footprint is, it's usually on most platforms a tick-based bar-by-bar volume profile. Now, it's a little more advanced than that, a little more complex, but that's an easy-to-understand foundational explanation for your intuition. Now, before I show you how to get your hands on this indicator, I want to explain everything it's doing, why it's so cool, and why using open interest to craft a footprint can actually be really useful. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, if you're not familiar with open interest in crypto, it's basically the number of active existing contracts between a buyer and a seller. Take a look down here at this open interest indicator. When open interest goes up, this means more contracts have been established and entered the open active pool. When open interest goes down, this means contracts between buyer and seller are being closed. Now, you might be wondering, okay, how is this any more useful than some regular volume footprint, volume delta, or volume profile calculation? And that's a great question, and that's the one I wanted you to ask. When combining open interest with volume, we can form a little bit better of an assumption about whether long positions are building, short positions are building, or long positions are closing, or short positions are closing. Now, this is really important, so stick with me, because when we just look at traditional volume and the direction of a price return, this is how many volume profiles are built. If price closes higher, then all the volume is assigned as buy volume. If price closes lower, then all the volume is assigned as sell volume. This is, of course, not perfectly accurate, but it is an industry standard. The reason it's a standard is because it doesn't take high granularity data to calculate, and if this assumption is applied everywhere, then it's considered unbiased. Now look at this. This is a traditional volume profile calculated on TradingView. Now the only way for this volume profile to be perfectly accurate, and what I mean by that, is that at each tick level in the session, a perfect record of aggressive buys and aggressive sells are recorded is if the volume profile has access to tick level transaction data or time and sales data. Most volume profiles don't calculate this way because it's really heavy. So what these volume profiles do is if price goes up, then all the volume on that bar is buy volume, which are aggressive market buys. And if price goes down by lowering the bid price, then volume on that bar at that tick level is recorded as sell volume, which are aggressive sell orders. Now, this assumption, of course, is an aggregation and it cannot be perfectly accurate. And here is where our glorious, beautiful open interest steps in to refine this assumption ever so slightly. And it adds another complete dimension to how we classify participant behavior. Now take a look at what I typed out here on the chart. This is the four-quadrant matrix or the heuristic commonly used in futures trading to integrate open interest data, inform assumptions about trader behavior, intentions, sentiment. You get the idea. Just stick with me. When price goes up and open interest increases, this is commonly assumed as an indication of long positions building. If price increases and open interest decreases, here's where we start adding new assumptions. We call this shorts closing. And that is an assumption that we don't see in traditional volume profile. The next quadrant is price decreasing, open interest increasing. That is shorts opening. And the final quadrant is price decreasing, open interest decreasing. That's longs closing. That is another new assumption. Now, I will be the first to tell you this is not entirely accurate. It still relies on assumptions and data aggregation. And without tick level transaction data, it's not possible to perfectly record any of this information. but we can still do a pretty decent job to make something useful out of it. Now, you might be wondering, wait a second, dude, why do I care? If shorts are closing or longs are opening, both of them, if they're intense, make price go up. And I'm glad you've asked that question, or I asked it for you. Now follow me here. I'm going to draw this downwards line as best I can. My hands are very shaky. I don't do this well. It's why I never got into trend line stuff. But let's look at this big, beautiful red line that I made here. Price is obviously going down. Can't argue against that. But let's see what open interest is doing. For a fair portion of this price decrease, this negative drift, open interest is increasing. Now, what does this tell us? What did we just learn? Well, the common heuristic used here is that this means short positions are opening. We cannot know that with perfect accuracy, but this is important information because short positions opening in mass has very different long-term effects than long positions closing in mass. Why, you might ask? Take a look here, and this is at the most simplified explanation of shorts opening versus longs closing. Shorts opening would show directional intent position expansion. Longs closing shows risk management, not directional intent. But before we move forward, it's really important for me to say this. Just because a short position opened doesn't mean the position is a naked directional bet. It could be to hedge along a delta neutral basis trade, inventory balancing, arbitrage, tons of other nerdy stuff that no one cares about. But it's not really possible for us to figure out if any of that nerdy stuff is going on here on TradingView. So in the context of this four-quadrant model, and I didn't make this up, it's very popular, in this context, shorts opening is a reflection of directional intent. But there's very important caveats to that. Now, if we just stick to this four-quadrant model, ignore the nerdy stuff, then we can reasonably say, within this context, that shorts opening is indicative of bearish sentiment, while longs closing would be indicative of risk management. If sentiment is truly bearish, then we would say price will probably decrease continuously until a sentiment flip. Now, longs closing can be a consequence of bearish sentiment, but in itself is not a primary catalyst or indication of trader sentiment in this market. It's more so an after effect. All this nerdy stuff to say that if price is decreasing and open interest is increasing, we can use two words to describe this environment: market bearish. And if price is increasing and open interest is increasing, two more words: market bullish. Now that we have that out of the way, let's look at the footprint, which I made from scratch, by the way, and it won editor's pick. So somebody else thought it was really cool, not just me. Now, what this footprint does is adheres to the four-quadrant matrix we just discussed at specific tick levels on each candlestick throughout the session. And if we zoom in really closely here to get to the cool stuff, we can see each tick level on the bar has a record of LO, LC, SO, and SC. This means, in order, longs opening, longs closing, shorts opening, and shorts closing. We already went over why those assumptions are important for this model. So for this specific tick level on this bar, 34 longs opened, 73 longs closed, 16 shorts opened, 30 shorts closed. We also have the total open interest delta here, which was -25, and the open interest delta percentage, -16%. And this information is supposed to give you greater insight into whether positions are building on the long side or short side, or positions are reducing on the long side or short side. There's a ton of informational content you can extract from that and build trading strategies around. Just remember, it's still an assumption on aggregated data. Now, I specifically made it with a bunch of cool colors. If you see a colored box, a green box means longs opening was the dominant mechanical interaction that took place at the tick level. A red box means shorts opening was the dominant interaction. Yellow boxes means shorts closing was dominant, and purple boxes means long closing was dominant. So let's look at this one example bar here and how we would read the intrabar activity for this specific 30-minute candle. It's where my cursor is located. We can see near the lower half of this candle range, we have a lot of green color. This means long positions were building in the lower half of this candle range. But then that kind of stops. In the upper half of this candle range starts to jump over the rainbow a little bit. We see some red, yellow, purple. You get the idea. But later on during this price move, there is some indication of shorts trying to open here. As price moves higher, we have these two purple boxes. This would be an indication that longs are closing, which would be them taking profit most likely. And then near the very tippity top of this candle, we see a lot of yellow, which means a lot of short positions closing. These short positions that were closing very well may have been where these red boxes are located, the short positions that were opened here. So for this candle, we get to see the four-quadrant matrix, the foundational heuristic in action. Longs building, and for those of you who are super serious about these footprints, I have inbuilt imbalance detection here in these really small triangles, circles, all these basic shapes. This shows us the value area, the POC, all that common stuff. Now, before we take a look at the settings, you can find this indicator by adhering to a super secret ritual. Just click this button on the top of TradingView that pulls up the indicators tab. Type in Open Interest Footprint IQ. It won an editor's pick. You can't miss it. Click this button here and it's yours forever. Now here in the settings, there's a bunch of cool stuff we can do. The most important setting for this entire indicator is the granularity setting. I have it on 1 minute. I highly suggest, if possible, that you use 1 tick. This will make the calculations as accurate as they can be on TradingView. Using tick data does require a professional plan. If you can't use tick data, then we got to go up 1 level and use 1 second data. This will make it much more accurate than using 1 minute data. But if we don't have access to the 1 second data either, unfortunately, we're stuck with the good old 1 minute data, which will create profiles or footprints, but isn't exactly that accurate. Now, the next most important setting we have is the tick level distance. Leave this on 0 for auto calculation. If the footprint isn't loading right or it's all mushed up or something, then you can increase this number to a higher amount, and this will control the size of tick levels used in the footprint. Now, let's move on to the coolest setting for the entire indicator, and that's cumulative levels. And check out what happens when I turn this on. I think it looks so cool. All this setting does is shows us the dominant mechanical interaction on a cumulative basis, not on a bar by bar basis. So if you see all this red right here, this means that across this sequence of candlesticks, not just one candle, but all the candles located in this section, at these red levels, shorts opening was the dominant interaction. So instead of resetting the count for longs open, shorts closed, all that on a bar by bar basis, the values carry over for the entire session. Now you can set when these cumulative values reset based on whatever your preferences are. I have no clue. And if we move on to our next settings, we have delta boxes. And if we move on to our next settings, this is all visual stuff. Feel free to experiment with it. We won't go over it extensively here. But finally, we can set our value area percentage, our imbalance percentage. I don't use imbalance percentage like TradingView does. I use a percentage of total model. It's fine, nothing to worry about. Just experiment with it. And then our final key setting here is the stacked imbalance count. I have this set to 3. This means if imbalances form on 3 consecutive tick levels, you will see an indication for a stacked imbalance. If you're excited to use this free open source indicator, or you think it looks cool, or you like listening to me for any reason, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on. Your support is really helpful, and I love making this open source stuff for you guys. If you're looking for a trading home or something, check out our Discord server. We have active traders there every day, talking analysis, trading, what's gonna happen next, and follow us on TradingView so you always know when we got a new tool to share with you guys. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.